probably filled out a survey. Maybe it was about your experience at a restaurant, or it was part of your evaluation of a course you took. In fact, when I'm teaching a course, I often give my students a survey at the beginning of the term to find out a little bit more about them, including their background, why they're taking the course, and what expectations they have. I can then use this information to make decisions about how to structure the course, or predict what topics might take more time, or to develop examples that will be of interest to more students. Surveys represent one form of collecting data from people that is widely used by scientists in a number of disciplines. Social scientists with questions about the perceptions people have about crime in their neighborhoods conduct surveys, asking people what they know, where they get their news, and who they trust to give them information. City planners and land managers interested in understanding what factors cause people who live in wildfire-prone areas to fireproof their property use surveys that ask questions about knowledge and perceptions of wildfire and risk. Epidemiologists seeking to determine the source and transmission mechanism of an infection outbreak conduct surveys of people in affected regions. The United States Census is an example of a massive study of people. The Census Bureau attempts to survey every household in the United States every 10 years to determine the characteristics of the household in order to draw federal voting districts and distribute federal funding, among other things. These are really complicated issues and require well-written questions that have been tested and help rule out variables that might influence how people respond. Think about my survey that I give students at the beginning of the class. One of the things I want to know about is their interest in the subject area. I have a friend who conducts a similar survey in his class, and one time he asked students, "What will you take away from this class?" He was expecting students would tell him what they felt they learned and will remember beyond the course. But one student responded, "I wouldn't take anything away. I liked it." The student obviously read his question differently than he had intended. Had he phrased his question differently, maybe something like, "Please list at least one major concept you learned in this course," he may have gotten more reliable responses. Designing questions that allow you to get the responses you want takes work, testing, and practice. If you've ever been on the receiving end of a survey and thought, I don't really understand what they're asking, then you know why. Another important aspect of collecting data from people is making sure that you are doing so in an ethical way. It might seem that no harm could come from just asking people some questions, but there's more to it than that. Those questions might include personal information like income, age, and family history of disease. And maintaining confidentiality and maybe even anonymity is critical. In addition, it is unethical to collect data from people without them knowing that you are doing so. So a researcher needs to ensure that people give informed consent to participate. The informed part is important. They need to know why you are collecting the data and what they can expect. For these reasons, research that is based on collecting data from people has to be approved by a human subjects research board to ensure that the study is conducted within well-established ethical guidelines. Places like universities, research institutes, and government agencies each have their own group that reviews studies that use tools like surveys. If your research involves collecting data from people, talk to your mentor about the process of getting certified and getting your research approved. It's a critical part of your responsibilities. Surveys aren't the only way to collect data from people. Polls are a form of survey too, often used in politics and by commercial companies, but usually a poll is just a few questions, like, if you were voting for president tomorrow, who would you vote for? Universities might use their own internal data to compare students' grades with persistence or how long it takes students to complete a degree program. More recently, as mentioned with epidemiologists, researchers have begun to mine data from the internet, like Google searches. These types of big data research questions provide insight into our collective behaviors in a way that would be difficult to achieve with a survey.